Hey everyone, James here on the Crypto Swiss channel. Big news coming from FX Street. The US government is set to wrap up its audit of Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, and Cardano reserves next Saturday. If everything goes according to plan, we're just days away from discovering whether the US government actually holds any XRP right now. It's a complete mystery. Tired of fake gurus who claim to be expert traders but never trade live? I trade live on the second largest crypto exchange, where everything is transparent and results can't be faked. For over 440 days, I've consistently closed every month in profit. In the last 90 days alone, my followers have earned over $34,000 in profits with only 4% drawdown. Verified results, not empty claims. Want to see my verified stats? Click the first link in my profile and start copying my trades for free today. We'll dive deeper into that in this video, but as of now, nothing has been confirmed. Here's the kicker. This audit comes after a major shakeup in administration with President Trump back in office. They've been pretty transparent about the chaos they inherited, especially when it comes to tracking assets and improving communication between departments. They're essentially saying, hey, give us some time to sort this mess out. So, let's see what they uncover. Stay tuned, folks. David Sachs, now the crypto czar under President Trump, recently made a surprising admission. They simply don't know. Straight from the upper echelons of the federal government, Sachs openly stated that they're in the dark, at least for now. With the administration just taking over, they'll need time to dig into the details. This uncertainty raises some fascinating possibilities. Trump recently announced the creation of a national digital asset stockpile, which sounds bold on the surface. But here's the kicker. What if there's no XRP in that stockpile? Could the government just go out and start buying XRP to include it? That's the buzz circulating in the XRP community, but let's be real, that's not a viable solution. Let me explain why. Another big question, if the US government doesn't currently hold any XRP and can't just purchase it outright, could this mean XRP is excluded from the stockpile? This flies in the face of Trump's earlier remarks in March, where XRP was specifically mentioned. However, there could be a clever workaround here. I'll dive into that shortly. One thing is clear. This development bodes well for the long-term future of XRP. And let's not forget, XRP is currently flexing its strength in a market that hasn't yet seen a blow-off top this cycle. Exciting times for XRP holders. There's a lot unfolding, and as we go down this rabbit hole, one thing is certain. Being an XRP investor right now is like being on the edge of something big. But here's the disclaimer. I'm not a financial expert. This isn't financial advice. Don't buy or sell based on my words alone. Do your own research and always make informed decisions. The article dives into a fascinating development. The US Department of the Treasury, alongside other federal agencies, is wrapping up an audit of its Bitcoin reserves this Saturday, April 5th. This stems from President Trump's executive order requiring a full inventory of government-held digital assets within 30 days. The audit aims to uncover the government's exact Bitcoin holdings and whether altcoins like XRP, Solana, or Cardano are part of its strategic reserves. And here's where it gets interesting. We have no clear answers yet about assets like XRP. Could there have been silent seizures or forfeitures that went under the radar? It's not impossible. While it's plausible the government might hold some XRP, the lack of major headlines or chatter in the crypto community suggests any such holdings are likely minimal. Just speculation, of course. However, when it comes to Bitcoin, the government's stash seems to be quite substantial. The details remain under wraps for now, but this audit might finally shine a light on the mysterious world of government-held crypto. There's a website that tracks this kind of thing, and while the government hasn't technically confirmed which Bitcoin on the blockchain it holds, blockchain forensics have helped piece the story together. The biggest seizure? It came from the infamous 2016 Bitfinex hack. As of December 13th, 2024, pre-audit, so take this with a grain of salt, the government is said to hold around 207,189 Bitcoin. Of that, a staggering 94,643 Bitcoin came from the Bitfinex hack alone. Pretty wild, right? It does bring up a big question though. Why isn't there a push to return these Bitcoins to their rightful owners? We know where they were stolen from, so why not? Instead, the government seems to be treating this like a Bitcoin strategic reserve. If anyone has a straight answer, drop it in the comments, because I'm stumped. Speaking of the Bitfinex hack, let's talk about one of the key players behind it, Heather Razzlecon Morgan. Yes, that's her rap persona, because of course she raps. She and her boyfriend were behind this massive Bitcoin heist, leading to her being sentenced to 18 months in prison on November 18th, 2024. If you've never heard her music, well, brace yourself. It's not exactly what you'd call good. Actually, it's hilariously bad. So bad it's almost worth listening to. just for the experience. This self-proclaimed crocodile of Wall Street helped pull off one of the biggest crypto thefts in history. Hard to believe this isn't a Netflix series yet, right? Heather Razzle-Khan Morgan was sentenced to 18 months in prison on Monday for helping her husband, Ilya Lichtenstein, launder tens of thousands of bitcoins stolen from the Bitfinex cryptocurrency exchange back in 2016. If you haven't followed this wild story, you're missing out. It's truly fascinating. Let me tell you why. I first heard about this last November, if memory serves, when Netflix launched a documentary called Biggest Heist Ever. My girlfriend and I watched it together, and wow, what a ride. Even if you're not into crypto, this story is jaw-dropping. But if you are, it's next level insane. It's the kind of story you'd think was made up. Two amateur criminals pulling off one of the largest crypto heists in history, and then watching how their plan unraveled spectacularly. Honestly, it's hard to believe these two thought they'd get away with it. The kicker? The penalties they received seem shockingly light for the scale of what they did. Here's the crazy part. Almost half of the stolen bitcoins came from this single heist. Let that sink in. It's absurd to think that two individuals could have such an impact on the crypto world. But anyway, shifting gears, let's talk XRP. Here's something from Nick, aka Crypto Crusader, who claims the US government might soon purchase a large amount of XRP. Intriguing, right? But here's the truth. They won't. And arguably, they legally can't. Here's why. Back in 2025, the Trump administration issued an executive order establishing the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve and Digital Asset Stockpile. It clearly states the government won't acquire digital assets, like XRP, beyond those obtained via criminal or civil forfeiture. So no, there won't be any big XRP buying spree by the government anytime soon. It's a bit disappointing, sure, but still cool that XRP could already be part of the stockpile. Of course, things could change in the future, but for now, as Nick pointed out, this Saturday marks the cutoff for the US government's audit of their crypto reserve and stockpile. This could be a game-changing moment for crypto, one that might redefine the narrative around XRP. The big question now is how, or if, the US government plans to stockpile XRP. Speculation has centered around the idea that the government might accept settlement payments in XRP as part of Ripple's lawsuit with the SEC. However, we've recently learned Ripple has already escrowed the settlement amount in USD, shifting the conversation entirely. If the government is serious about acquiring XRP, they'd have to buy it outright on the open market. Imagine the legitimacy and spotlight this would bring to XRP. It's a scenario that could shake up the industry in a major way. That said, let's be real. The likelihood of the government buying XRP directly is slim, but this whole situation still raises some intriguing questions, and maybe some exciting possibilities. Let's dig into the details. Here's a headline from September 4th, 2024. Worth noting, Ripple and SEC agree to stay a $125 million judgment, hinting at appeal. Ripple's legal team requested to delay the $125 million payment from the August 7th ruling. And in a surprising twist, the SEC agreed. According to the court filing in the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of New York, payment has been pushed past September 6th. So, what does all of this mean for XRP? The answers may still be unfolding, but one thing's for sure. This saga is far from over. The legal team suggested Ripple park 111% of the judgment, around $139 million, into a bank account until 30 days after the appeal period ends or any appeals are resolved. But here's the kicker. Fast forward about a month later, on October 2nd, the SEC finally decided to appeal. Naturally, this threw a wrench into things. It wouldn't make sense for Ripple to pay up while the appeal loomed, given the uncertainty of what could happen next. Other courts might tweak penalties or alter outcomes entirely, leaving everything in limbo. With so many moving parts, Ripple came up with a practical solution. They proposed putting the funds in escrow for now. Surprisingly, the SEC agreed, so Ripple handed over the cash, a massive stack of dollars, not XRP, $139 million in cold, hard cash. Let's be clear, no crypto here, just dollars. Fast forward to March 25th, and here's the twist. The SEC will only keep $50 million of Ripple's fine, refunding the rest to the RAP case, according to Ripple's legal officer. You've probably heard this by now, but after the SEC dropped its appeal, Ripple followed suit by dropping their cross-appeal. This opened the door for negotiations, and Ripple successfully slashed the original penalty from $125 million to $50 million. Again, we're talking dollars, not XRP, a win worth celebrating. But wait, there's more. On November 4th, another layer emerged. Is the SEC set to gain from Ripple's $125 million fine? According to one expert, not a single dollar will land in the SEC's pocket. Former SEC attorney Mark Feigl broke down the mechanics of this, highlighting how the funds are allocated. This is where it gets particularly interesting. Ripple's final $50 million penalty isn't heading to the SEC at all. That's a key takeaway from this roller coaster case. When asked about Ripple's $125 million fine, Feigl clarified that since the SEC won the institutional sales portion of the case, the money would go to institutional investors. But here's the kicker. The court found no actual losses for individual investors, meaning the funds ultimately end up in the US Treasury. Yes, you heard that right. Now, the penalty has been reduced to $50 million. But here's the absurd part. It doesn't go to the SEC or institutional investors because, quite simply, no one was financially harmed. Let that sink in. Years of legal battles, hundreds of millions spent, and no fraud allegations. Yet, here we are. It feels like a surreal waste of time and money. Thankfully, with a new administration in charge, maybe we can finally move past this chaos. But still, doesn't it all feel a bit ridiculous? Now here's where things get interesting. We know the government isn't planning to buy XRP for a national reserve, so either they already have an XRP stockpile, and we're about to find out. Exciting, right? Or they don't. And if they don't, the easiest way to get one? Ripple could hand over the $50 million fine in XRP instead of cash. It's the same financial hit for Ripple, and it would establish that XRP reserve in one simple move. Given the dramatically different regulatory environment compared to last year, this scenario isn't as far-fetched as it might have seemed a few months ago. If Ripple goes this route, then voila. The government has its XRP stockpile, essentially all courtesy of Ripple. An attorney, Jeremy Hogan, recently shed light on an intriguing legal scenario. This stems from a March 7th post he made, which I covered back then, but it's worth revisiting. He discussed the possibility of Ripple settling its judgment in a rather unconventional way, paying in XRP instead of US dollars. While theoretically possible, Hogan clarified it's not guaranteed and would require agreement from the Treasury. Here's what Hogan wrote on March 7th. Although the Ripple judgment is denominated in US dollars, Ripple could potentially satisfy the penalty by transferring an equivalent value of XRP to a federal XRP stockpile address. He cited a fascinating precedent, the 1869 Supreme Court case of Willard versus Taylor. This case, set in a post-Civil War era, when U.S. legal tender was less defined, saw the court order a contract fulfilled in gold instead of dollars. The court emphasized specific relief would be granted if it served justice, but withheld if it caused hardship or unfairness. Hogan acknowledged that Ripple's case differs, as it isn't a specific performance action. However, he argued the principle could apply, especially if the SEC and Ripple agreed on payment in a commodity like XRP. Without SEC approval, this approach wouldn't work. Now here's where things get interesting. The SEC, under this administration, has shown little interest in opposing new ideas when there's political will behind them. Trump's leadership, focused on securing wins, could push for solutions that once seemed impossible. If the right people align on this, it could genuinely happen. We're living in unique times, April 2025 to be exact. What seemed far-fetched just a few years ago now feels unexpectedly plausible. Whether or not this plays out remains to be seen, but it's exciting to consider. Hogan added another twist. Ripple's $125 million judgment is technically a penalty, and penalties are meant for the US Treasury. But guess what? The XRP stockpile is overseen by the Treasury, so maybe it's not such a hurdle after all. It's hard to say for sure if the US government holds XRP right now. It hasn't been disclosed. If true, even a small amount would be a fascinating revelation. For now, we wait. If all goes to plan, and this administration keeps things on track, we could have answers soon. The story might break as early as this Saturday, so stay tuned. It could be a game changer. We're on the verge of finding out, hopefully within just a few days, if the United States government owns any XRP. Unless some unexpected twist pops up, the answers should be coming soon, and who knows? We might even get a deeper look at what's going on behind the scenes. Maybe Ripple, the Treasury, and the SEC are quietly ironing things out as we speak. It's all speculation for now, but the suspense is real. Stay tuned. We'll see how this unfolds. Oh, and just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. Don't make any financial moves based on what I say. That wouldn't be smart. Until next time, Crypto Swas crew.